What if everything you're seeing right now, the wars, the trade tensions, the political chaos, is actually just the surface of a much deeper global shift? A shift so big that even Xi Jinping himself described it as changes not seen in 100 years. But here's the twist. Those changes didn't come gradually. They were accelerated, almost forced into existence by one man, Donald Trump. And while most people see Trump's actions as chaotic or reckless behind the scenes, they may have triggered one of the biggest strategic advantages China has ever had. Let's start with something most people completely miss. When Trump launched the trade war, it wasn't just about tariffs, it was an attempt to land a knockout punch on China's economy. The assumption was simple: cut China off from the American consumer and its growth machine collapses. And at first, the numbers seemed to support that idea. China's exports to the US dropped sharply. But then something unexpected happened. Instead of collapsing, China quietly rerouted its entire economic engine. Exports to Southeast Asia surged, trade with Europe increased, India became a growing market, and despite losing ground in the US, China ended the year with a record trade surplus, over $1 trillion. That's not survival. That's adaptation at a level most countries can't even imagine. Now, here's where it gets even more interesting and far more strategic. While the US was focused on tariffs, China was tightening its grip on something far more powerful: the global supply chain. You've probably heard of rare earth materials, but what you may not realize is this: China doesn't just produce them, it controls the entire ecosystem. Over 90% of the world's rare earth refining happens inside China. These materials are used in everything: your phone, electric vehicles, satellites, and even advanced weapon systems. So, while the US has military dominance, China holds something equally dangerous: the ability to quietly disrupt entire industries. Imagine a world where production lines stop, not because of war, but because critical materials simply don't arrive. No explosions, no headlines, just silence and economic paralysis. And here's a shocking detail most people overlook: the rare earth market itself isn't even that big, less than $10 billion. So why doesn't the US or Europe just build their own supply chains? Because for decades they chose not to. China made it unprofitable for others to compete by keeping costs low and environmental rules loose. Slowly, almost invisibly, the rest of the world became dependent. And now, reversing that dependency could take years, if not decades. But China's strategy doesn't stop there. While America is increasingly seen as unpredictable, China is playing a completely different game. It's presenting itself as the adult in the room. And here's the part that should really make you think. Western leaders are quietly starting to hedge. They're not fully trusting China, but they're also no longer fully trusting the United States. That's a massive shift. Countries that once relied entirely on Washington are now building parallel relationships with Beijing, not out of loyalty, but out of fear of being left exposed. And then there's the internet culture angle, which surprisingly reveals a lot about perception. On Chinese social media, Donald Trump has a nickname, Chuan Zhenguo, which roughly translates to Trump the Nation Builder, but not for America, for China. The idea is almost ironic. Trump's actions, whether intentional or not, are helping China rise faster by pushing the global system into fragmentation. There's even another viral term, taco, ancient Trump always chickens out, reflecting a belief that while Trump makes bold threats, he doesn't always follow through. Whether that's true or not isn't the point. The perception itself shapes how other countries respond. But before you think China is winning this game effortlessly, here's the reality most headlines don't show you. Beneath the surface, China is facing serious internal pressure. Entire cities, built with borrowed money, sit half empty. Industries are producing more than the world can consume. Local governments are buried in debt. And for the first time in decades, investment growth is slowing down. This has created a dangerous situation: deflation, prices drop, profits shrink, and businesses struggle to survive. It's like an economic machine that's too big to stop, but also too unstable to keep accelerating at the same pace. And then comes the hidden vulnerability that could change everything overnight: energy. Nearly half of China's oil imports pass through a single choke point, the Strait of Hormuz. If conflict in the Middle East escalates and that route is disrupted, China doesn't just face higher prices, it faces a supply shock. And unlike trade routes, energy disruptions hit immediately, factories slow down, transport systems weaken, entire sectors feel the pressure. This is why, despite its growing power, China avoids direct military involvement. It knows exactly where its weaknesses are. Meanwhile, the United States still holds unmatched advantages: military power, financial dominance, and the global influence of the dollar. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Power today isn't just about strength, it's about stability. And right now, many countries are questioning whether the US can provide that stability consistently. So, what we're really witnessing isn't just a rivalry, it's a transition, a shift from a world dominated by one superpower to a system where influence is fragmented, alliances are flexible, and every country is playing both sides. No one wants to fully commit anymore. Everyone is hedging because when two giants are fighting, not just with weapons, but with economies, technology, and influence, the smartest move is to stay balanced. And that leads to the biggest question of all. What happens next? Does China continue rising quietly until it reshapes the global order? Or do its internal weaknesses catch up before it gets there? Does the US reassert its dominance, or does unpredictability push more allies away? One thing is clear, this isn't a short term conflict, it's a long game. And in this game, the winner won't be the one who makes the loudest moves, but the one who controls the future without anyone even realizing it's already happened.